Hello, everybody, and welcome to this live stream, or chances are you're watching this after the fact, on Quasar's loading state, pagination, and sorting. So there's one part of this video in particular that's going to take a little bit of time, which is dealing with server-side pagination. So I'm really excited about that because Quasar makes it surprisingly simple to do. But that's where the chunk of this video is going to be. And if you like this kind of thing, if you like learning about Vue components, and in particular Quasar components, which in my opinion are the best out there, then check out quasarcomponents.com and I will see you on the other side. Basically, I teach you all 72 of Quasar's components. We're also going to build out YouTube's UI. We're also going to build out a live chat app using Laravel and Quasar and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. And there's like some other kind of cool bonuses I throw in there. So definitely go ahead and check that out if you're interested in learning about Quasar's components. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So in order to do this video today, we're going to have to go to table.quasarcomponents.com/dogs. So this is an API endpoint that I created for you so that you can very easily deal with paginated data. So you'll see here we get a whole bunch of data and it is paginated. We get 15 records per page. And then we get all of these in this metadata here to let us know about the pagination. All right, so we're not going to need all of this metadata, but it's basically a fully fledged pagination working API. So definitely go ahead and check out that URL and explore this a little bit before we get started. But the main things I want you to note here, we've got current page. We've also got, if I scroll right down here, total. That gives us the total number of records that we have. And we're going to end up needing that later on for server-side pagination. All right, cool. So now you know what that is. I might actually go ahead and copy that, paste it in here, and then comment it out just so that we've got that at the ready. And what next? So basically, this is, by the way, is based off of a blog post that I did on dev.to. So I'll include a link for that so you can go ahead and check that out. And the next thing we want to do is install Axios. So if you don't have Axios installed already, then we're going to go ahead and say yarn add Axios. That's going to allow us to actually grab the data from that endpoint we were just looking at. So it looks like I didn't have it installed. So that's going to go ahead and get that installed. Sweet. Close our console out. And now we can come up here and say import Axios from Axios so that we can start using it. Now, in setup here, we want to have a loading state. So let's say const loading is equal to a reference, and we'll set that reference equal to true by default. So when this first starts, the table will be loading. And then we're going to say const dogs, that's going to be our data, and that will be equal to an empty array. So obviously we're going to have to grab the data from this endpoint and whack it into that empty array. Now we want to do all of the columns. So let's say const columns is equal to an array, and I'm just going to smash these out. So we've got name equal to name. This is just stuff based on that endpoint in there. And we'll also want a label for that name, which will be name. We'll want a field for that, which is going to be the name field. And let's align it to the left there. So let's copy paste that down maybe 3 times. How about we just do 3 columns? We'll keep it simple. And now this one is going to be age. And then this one is going to be email. Now, usually for numbers, I like it to be aligned to the center. So I'll set that equal to center. And I think that's about it for the columns. Next, we want to expose all of this data. So let's come down here and expose it to the template. Save it. And we're going to need ref. That's why we're getting that squiggly line. So let's yank ref out of view. Okay, so we've got our column set up. Now we actually need to fetch the data from this endpoint and then update dogs with that data. And we're also going to change the loading state while we're at it. So I'm going to do something super basic to begin with. We'll just say a get request to that endpoint. We'll go ahead and grab that. I can get rid of this comment now since we're using it. And then we're going to say dot then. So once you've gotten that data, response, let's pull out the response, and we'll say dogs.value is equal to response.data.data. Now, why am I using the word data twice there? I'll show you why. If I control click on this, when I say data, that gives me the data of the response. All right, so that gives me this entire object here. Then I need to pull data out of that. So it's kind of an unfortunate thing where we have to use the same word twice there, and it kind of confuses people sometimes. But data gives us the object, which is this response. And then when we say data again, it actually gives us that data there. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. So that's going to set that. The next thing we need to do is say dot finally. And then we're basically just going to set that loading state. So we'll say loading.value is equal to false. There we go. So that's basically all the behind the scenes stuff that we need to do. Now we can actually use all of these values here to get it to work. So we come up here, we can now say, I'm just going to scroll down to the blog that I've got down here. This part's actually surprisingly simple. Q-table, all right? And then in that table, we want to say the color is equal to secondary. The reason I'm doing that is to show you that you can actually set the color of that loading bar, and it basically respects the color that we set here on the table. Now we're going to say loading is equal to that loading variable that we've exposed. Rows is equal to the dogs. And then columns is going to be equal to the columns. Save that. And there we go. If I refresh the page, you'll notice that we get a loading state for a moment there. Check this out. See how we get that little loading symbol as it loads the page? So that's kind of cool. And that's it. Everything's working. That's how you do some basic loading state using Quasar. But of course, I've got a lot more to share. Another thing we can actually do is override that loading slot. And this is really cool. I'm grabbing this example from the Quasar docs. Is there anything else I need to change here? No, we probably won't need the color though, since we're going to override that ourselves. I'll leave it there just in case. So now what I can do is say template. And then we can say hashtag, in other words, the slot loading. I want you to dig into that slot. And I want you to put inside of there Q-inner dash, whoops, spelled that wrong, inner dash loading. There we go. And then basically we can say showing to say that this is going to be showing this inner loading. And then set the color of that equal to secondary. Let's go with that. Save it. And there we go. It just means that we can override the loading slot there, which basically gives us access to this entire table. And you know what? Let me just set this equal to true so you can see what it looks like. And there we go. Then we get that beautiful loading spinner. I actually think that looks better than the default loader that we get from Quasar. So that's pretty cool. All right. So let's just bring this back to loading here. And what's the next thing we're going to explore? All right. So next I want to show you pagination and modeling pagination as well. So if we come down here and we say const pagination is equal to, let's make it a ref to an object here. Now, let me show you some of the stuff that we get with Quasar pagination. We can say sort by, and that means that by default, we're going to sort it by, and we'll say the name in this example. We can also say descending, means that it's going to be whether or not it's going to be descending. Let me just fix the spelling there. And we'll set that equal to false, for example. And so these are less pagination related. And this basically allows us to sort things from the beginning when we're dealing with pagination. So that's kind of cool. But the more pagination related stuff is this. We can say the page is equal to 1. And then we can even say rows per page and set that equal to something like 3. All right. So notice that by default, the rows per page is 5. But we're now going to set that equal to 3. And now what I'll do is I'll expose this on the template like so. And all we have to do is now model that here on the table. V-model pagination, right? So we've got this special pagination modeling. I love how Vue 3 makes this easier, by the way. Rather than using that weird .sync stuff, we can just say model the pagination. And let's set that equal to pagination. All right, so now the pagination object that we've got here is being modeled up here. And that's why we're now only getting 3 per row, 3 per page. And we can say next, next, and we can skip through the pages like that. Now, if we change this from page 1 to page 2, notice that by default, it's going to take us straight to page 2. So that's really cool. We have total control over the pagination. If you wanted, you could even like have your own pagination component that basically uses this, models this bit of data that would then update the table. So that's a good sort of idea of what you can do with pagination. So I'm going to scroll down the blog a little bit more to see what else I've got here. Now, another thing you might want to know about is rows, this option here, which is rows per page options. I know that's a little bit of a mouthful. Now, we can give this an array, and basically this allows us to go to this rows per page, this records per page dropdown. And by default, there's quite a few options there. Now, what we can do is change those options by saying, for example, 3, maybe 5, 10 is probably another common one, or maybe 15. And then 0 represents all, okay? Because it doesn't make sense to have a page with nothing on it. So therefore, Quasar's made it so that 0 means all. So if I save that, now this menu gives us 3, 5, 15, and all, which aligns with what we've set up over here. So that's kind of cool that we can tap into that. What else can we do? All right, so this is the fun part. We're going to dive into server-side pagination now. And I'm going to start down at the bottom with the script tag. Now, rows per page options isn't really going to make much sense with server-side pagination because that's going to be up to the back end. So let's come down here and start messing around with this now. Where will I start? All right, so we're no longer going to include this sorting related stuff. I just wanted to show you that as an example. We'll set rows per page equal to 15 because that's what it is on our back end. It's by default going to use 15. Now, another thing we're going to need here is a rows number. So we'll set that to 0 by default, but basically we're going to have to tell the Quasar component how many rows there are in total. And by doing that, it's going to give us the correct feedback data here so that when we click on that last button, it knows what the last page is. It needs to know the number of rows in order to be able to select, to create a last page button there, which is why we're now introducing this new piece of data. Okay, so now I'm going to change this up a little bit. And how about we say const fetch dogs, and we set that equal to a function, and we're going to pass through the page number there. All right, so when we fetch the dogs, we're going to say, this is what page I want you to start on. And by default, we set that to 0. In other words, just the default page. And now let's just grab all of this and whack it in there and basically play around with it to get it to start working. So we're going to throw in some parameters here into this request. And then we'll say page is equal to page. So this is pretty much the same as saying page is equal to whatever was passed through here. So for example, 0. And it's just a nicer way to do it, in my opinion. I rather do this in JavaScript rather than doing it in one big string there. Just looks a little bit nicer to me. So Axios allows us to do that. All right, so now it knows what page it's going to be jumping to. Next, when we're done, we're going to say dogs.values equal, yep, that's all going to be the exact same. Now we're going to grab the metadata. So the metadata we want to grab, if I control click this link here, is basically all of this stuff here, all of the pagination related stuff. Okay, so we can do that by saying const meta is equal to response.data, spell that right, dot meta. All right, so now we've got all the metadata that we can play around with. And I might even just say here console.log meta, and let's just get something up and running. So when we start, we're going to fetch the dogs. And I think that's enough for it to work. There we go. It's fetching from the back end. And now if I come in here, notice that we now, I'll zoom in a little bit for you. Notice that we now have all of that metadata available to us, which is awesome. We can now use it in order to do our pagination. Remember that total number, this rows number here that I was talking about before. We now have the information we need to actually set that here. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and continue building this out. Now we can set all of that pagination data by saying pagination.value page. So we want to set the page there, and that's going to be meta.current underscore page, right? So let's have a look at that in here. There we go. There's the current page. We're basically setting that on our pagination. All right, so let me scroll up a little bit. Where is it here? Page. Have I set that there? No, we should probably set that by default. Oh, no, we have got it there. I just clicked on it. Had a bit of a brain fart. So basically, we're saying this page is now going to be equal to whatever the page has been passed through on the back end there, just to ensure that that is correct. All right, let's move on to the next one. We can also say pagination.rows per page and set that equal to meta per page, right? So we're basically mapping the data from our pagination here, and it's telling us on the back end the rows per page is 15. So we're setting that to make sure that that is correct as well. Now, another one that we'll have to set, like I mentioned before, is rows number, and the rows number is meta.total for our API, this number here. So there we go. That should be it for mapping all of the data. And that should all be working fine, except now we need to actually make it so that when we click on these buttons, they work correctly in regards to our pagination. So what we're going to do is Quasar actually exposes an at request method here. So what we can do is say at request, and we'll just say handle request. All right, so we're going to create a handle request method. We'll expose that handle request method here, and then we'll actually build it. So const handle request is equal to a function, and it's going to take in some props that we can then use in order to do our pagination. All right, so basically, this means that when we click on one of these buttons here, whatever is being updated, so for example, maybe the page number will be updated on pagination when we click on that, it will then be passed through to the props there. And now we can tell fetch dogs which page, what the new page is that we want to fetch from. I'll show you what I mean. Now we can say fetch dogs props dot pagination dot page. All right, I might even just do a cheeky little console.log here so you can see what that looks like. Props. All right, so let's come in here. I'm going to click on the next button. And there we go, that's working. And just to show you why that works, when we click on that next button, request is fired, which fires off this handle request method. All right, and in the props, we've got pagination, access to all of the pagination related stuff. And it's saying, hey, the new page is page 2 now. So what we do is we now grab that new page number and send it through to fetch dogs. Fetch dogs now takes in that page number and sends it through to the backend. It says, hey, backend, I want you to say that the page is now equal to, in this case, it would be 2. All right, so that's what this is doing. And this is just a cleaner way of writing that query string. All right, so then that sends the right backend request. We set all of the data, we update all of the pagination values, and it works. How cool is that? So this is actually quite simple compared to what it's usually like to deal with pagination with components, especially if you're rolling out your own. So I reckon this is absolutely awesome. And now you can see if I go next here, that's all working. We can also move to the start page and that'll work. And if we try and move to the end page, in fact, let me show you this in the console. If we try and go to the end page, Quasar can now figure out what the last page is because we updated that rows, that total rows value there. So really, really cool. We now have pagination working with server side using Quasar. And honestly, to me, this is a pretty small amount of code to get that kind of insane functionality. So let's get rid of that console.log and we're going to move on to the next thing, which is sorting. And I might actually, can I do this with pagination? Now we're going to have to remove pagination in order to get this working. So I might just comment out that value. Oh, weird. It's keeping the formatting there. What's going on there? That's weird. I don't know. Anyway, we want to update our columns here. And we're going to say here, sortable, sortable is equal to true. And let's just set that equal to true for all of the columns here. All right, so we're basically saying, hey, I want you to have a default sorting mechanism for these columns, all right? Now, notice when I hover this, I get that little arrow there, and I can sort my data. Now, I don't think it's working because we're using server-side pagination here, which is kind of messing things up. So I'm going to have to look for a way to basically disable it. Let's get rid of all of that and bring us back to a much more basic example. We'll get rid of the handle request stuff. Don't worry, I've got a repo that has all of this stuff there anyway. Save that. Is it still going to build okay? Yep. And there's probably something else in pagination that's messing it up. We can get rid of the rows number now. And let's change the rows per page to maybe 5 by default. That might be enough to get this working. There we go. So now the reason that wasn't working before is because we were relying on pagination. And obviously you need to do other stuff in terms of sorting. If you're using pagination, you then need to push that sorting onto the back end. So now that we've removed the pagination and brought us back to a more basic example, setting sortable equal to true is now going to allow us to easily sort this data. How cool is that. And there might be something else I missed here. Did I include the row key? Let's just scroll up. You're usually going to want a rows key as well, which I believe is row dash key. Yep, there we go. And we'll set that equal to ID. And that's basically saying, actually, let's set it to email because we haven't brought through the ID there. It's basically saying that the unique value here is the email address, and it means that everything is going to update correctly. Sometimes you can end up with update issues if you don't set a key, and so Quasar allows us to easily do that by saying row key there. All right, so now we can easily sort by email address, by age. See, that's all working too. Is it working though? 1925. We're getting this weird one here where Willis is equal to 15. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I've probably done something janky that's kind of messed that up. Yeah, weird. So I'll do a little bit of looking, but if I can't figure it out, then we're just going to push on here. So we've got pagination. Look at the page setup. Yeah, very strange. You know what it might be doing? It might be doing things by string instead. No, that wouldn't make sense either. Oh, yeah, because then you got 1, and then you got 2. No, because then that would actually show up as the correct number. That's all right. You can dig a little bit deeper into the docs. I want to keep this video short, so I won't dig into that right now. But another thing that you can actually do is change the sorting algorithm. So what we can do to do that, let me just lay this out a little bit nicer. Come down here, and I'll go Control D to kind of lay this out nicely. You can come in here and say what you want that sort algorithm to be. So we can bring in value A and then value B. And let me just do something basic where we're going to say sort it by the email, but sort it by the last part of the email, right? So the part after the @ symbol. And we can do that now by saying, for example, const domain A. So the domain of the email is equal to A dot split. And we're going to split it by the @ symbol. And then we'll just grab 1. So this is going to split that string up via the @ symbol. And we're going to grab that last bit there on the array, which will be the domain. So now let's say domain B, which will be the exact same thing, but we'll do it with B. There we go. And now what we can do is we can say return, and modern JavaScript allows us to do this really easily. Domain A dot locale compare domain B. So that allows us to very easily compare domain A to domain B. Save it. Let's see if this is going to work. I didn't have luck before. So C, D, E, F, G. There we go. It's now been sorted by email address. And hey, if you could see what happened wrong in terms of my age sorting here, then go ahead and let me know. So, it looks like it's working now. Maybe we just needed a good old page refresh. Yeah, I bet you that was related to the sort key. Nice. So that's with sorting. Seems to be working fine. There we go. All right, that's good news. It actually is working. Tremendous. All right, so that's actually it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly enjoyed making it for you. And hey, go ahead and check out, let me bring up this cool little banner here. Go ahead and check out quasarcomponents.com. Super proud of this. We're going to cover all 72 of Quasar components, and all profits for that go directly to Quasar. In fact, not just all profits, all of the money that I make through that goes directly to Quasar. So I'm taking in the cost of the servers and all that kind of stuff. Just a way to say kind of thank you, Quasar, for all of the work that you've done for us. And to be honest, I want you to buy this series, love it so much that when Quasar Cast eventually comes out, which is going to be my subscription service, I want you to love this series so much that you will then become a subscriber to Quasar Cast. So that's kind of my selfish reason for doing quasarcomponents.com. I guess the concept is I get to then donate a whole bunch of money to Quasar, which is a framework that I want to flourish because I use it at work all the time and I love it. So then by offering this for free, not for free, sorry, by offering this and giving all the money to Quasar, then the framework that I love gets better. And it means that I get the chance to serve you in the future there's more chance that I'll get money from you then because you'll love the stuff that I've built so much. So that's kind of my selfish reason behind this. But, it's great for you because you get to support the Quasar community and you get to learn all 72 of Quasar's components. And I think I've done about 52 videos now. And this currently isn't being sold yet. This is just like an expression of interest. I'll probably open up the sales page next week. I actually got the whole week of work off, so I can just work on that. So definitely check out quasarcomponents.com. And if you're watching this video after the fact, it might already be live. So go ahead and check that out. Thank you so much for watching. I absolutely love building these videos, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoy making them for you. Go ahead and check out quasarcomponents.com, and I'll see you in the next live stream. Bye for now.